Okay, so we're going to be continuing on with talking about PIP, which is Python's package manager. And I'm just going to get straight into it. So if you've not seen the first part, watch that now. But what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about isolating our environments. And what I mean by that, as a quick recap, is if I use pip, the command just in the terminal like this, and I do list, you'll see that all of these packages here are available everywhere within my computer because it is installed, air quotes, globally for my my installation of Python. So the way that we get around having this be an issue is we use virtual environments. And another reason this is really important is, let's say, for example, I have two projects that both use the same library, but they use different versions of the same library. This will allow you to have different versions in tandem without them conflicting with each other. So before I go ahead and create a virtual environment, it's important to know how to clean up what you have so far. So in order to do that, we're going to talk about a operator, which is this greater than or less than. I don't remember which way it was. I think this is the greater than symbol. But consider it a chevron or an arrow in this instance. And this is saying output to file. Okay. So if I did pip freeze, what this does, unlike pip list, this will output all of our packages with the dependencies, but it does it in this different format where it's got the name of the library equals and then the full version number. So you can see it's pretty much identical, but this is more nicely written for us to just kind of read quickly, whereas pip freeze is actually intended for us to write to a file. So in order to do that, we do pip freeze, and then we can use our operator here, which is going to say take the output of that command and stick it in this file. And I'm going to type a file called requirements.txt. So that's a text file, and it's called requirements. And you'll see here the path it's going to go to is the current directory. So that's the full stop, which means right here, and then it's going to be called requirements/txt. So we should see it appear on the left-hand side. Whenever you use this operator, if the file you type doesn't already create, it will create it as a part of writing the file. So when I do this, we no longer get the output over here because we've redirected it into the file. And there is now this requirements.txt file here. And if I open it, this should look very familiar. This is exactly what we just had. So all of our globally installed Python packages are now here. And the reason we've done that is we have collected them into one place so that we can get rid of them. So I will just add this over here, and I'll say pip freeze and then requirements.txt. Okay, so that's the command I just used. Now, the reason it's requirements, you can call it whatever you want, to be honest. You should probably end it in txt, even though it would still work with other extensions, but that's just so your computer knows how to handle the file. But the standard convention in Python is to call it requirements. So just call it requirements. There's no reason not to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say pip uninstall, and I showed in uninstalling packages before, but this time, instead of giving the name of the packages, because I could just copy and paste these in or type them in and go through one at a time, we're going to actually read a file. So we're going to use -r, and this is just an argument that pip allows you to use. So if you did pip help uninstall, it would tell you what r does. But what that means itself is that we're going to read a file. And then instead of passing it all the packages, we're going to pass it the file that we want to read from. So we're saying pip uninstall everything from the file we're going to read, and this is the file. So what pip's going to do now is going to open this file. It's going to go through one at a time, and it's going to prepare itself to uninstall all of these packages. So let's do that. And it says we're going to get rid of Beautiful Soup. Yes, I would like to. We're going to get rid of, which is this? BS4, yeah. And it's probably going to say the Certify one, yep. And so on and so forth. So we could just keep hitting Y or keep hitting enter. You don't have to, because Y is an uppercase here, that means that's the default. So if you don't give it an argument, you just hit enter, it'll still just consider it a yes. There you go. And now we've gone through every single package. It should have everything uninstalled. So I'm going to use a command called clear. Very easy to remember. That clears the session. Doesn't change anything you've done, it just tidies it up so we can see exactly what we want to look at. And now if I type pip list, as you can see, there are no packages. If I do pip freeze, and I'll do pip freeze and save it to the requirements file again, as you can see, it's now empty. So that's perfect. We've cleaned up our global install. We no longer have all of that bloat. Perfect. And now it's time to reinstall it, but in the correct way. So I'll just add clear, which clears the terminal window. Okay. And then what was it? It was pip uninstall r and then requirements.txt. And I will move that up there just to group things together a bit. Okay. So in order to now install everything in a more conventional or a more preferred approach, what we're going to do is we're going to create little islands for all of our packages to live in. And we call these virtual environments. And in order to utilize a virtual environment, we first have to create one. In order to do that, we need a command which is Python and then /m for mother. And it's venv is what I'm going to do here. So in case you weren't aware, because you probably won't be if you are actually new to all these into like pip and the terminal itself, Python and then /m essentially means that we're going to run a command within Python. So Python-m and then venv, so that is virtual environment. That's just shorthand for virtual environment. So this command is with Python, we're going to create a virtual environment and we're going to call it, and in this case I've put venv, but this could be anything. This could be dog. It doesn't matter. But the last argument here, this is the name of the environment, and you're going to see it on the left hand side. So I like just calling it venv because there's no mistaking what it is. So if I go ahead and I run this, we'll see a couple of things have happened. So firstly, it's still thinking. It's creating a lot of files, and I'll explain that in more detail. But on the right-hand side, because I have the Python extension installed for VS Code, it's very cleverly gone, hey, we've noticed a new environment has been created. Do you want to select it for the workspace folder? And what that means is whenever I click this play button to run my code, instead of like typing the Python command, this little play button will use whatever the current like working folder is for Python, or the current environment. And you can see which one it's using based on down here. So mine's using the one that's installed from the App Store, because that's where I installed it on Windows. So I do want to use this new one, so I'm going to click yes. And suddenly this has changed. It's the same Python version, but when I hover over it, you can see that it lives in venv scripts python.exe. So what that means is our virtual environment command has created a new folder up here, and it's got a copy of Python in there. And that means that everything Python needs to run is now just in this folder. And whenever I run Python with this little play button now, because I've changed the context on here, I clicked it here, by the way, and that brings up this menu where you can select them if you ever want to change. But that means that it's going to use this one in the virtual environment. So that's perfect. We're almost there. But unfortunately, when I run Python in the terminal, it will still use my global one because the terminal has its own set of rules to VS Code. So all we need to do now in order to make sure our terminal is also using it is we need to activate the environment. And this is important because while we can run code using VS Code and using, by changing the context down here, if we want to install a package to only that virtual environment, we need to enable it first within our terminal session. So down here, I'm going to give this a shot. I haven't done this in a while. Let's see, venv. I was hoping that would happen. The autocomplete from last time I did it. This is the command you will need. So what this does is we have the full stop. So this is saying relative to this directory and then in the venv folder. So that's in here. It's then going into the scripts folder. So it's going into here. And then all it's doing is it's just using a file called activate. So all this command is doing is just using a file called activate. We've not got pip or Python or any of these navigation things. Whenever you just pass a file path to a file as your only argument in the terminal, it will just try to open and use that file. And very cleverly, what this activate file does, it's a script that's written specifically for Windows. And when I hit enter, it runs it, and that changes the context for me. So now anything I do is within that virtual environment. And you can see this is really nicely and clearly distinguished by having this venv bracket at the beginning. So we now know that everything we do is within the context of our virtual environment. So I'm going to clear the session again, just so it's nice and reset. And I'm going to just pop this command in here as well. So we've got it. So it was venv/scripts/activate. So that, just in case, just so we've covered it for everyone, that's for Windows, because that script there is written specifically for Windows. If you are on Linux or like a Unix system, or I believe Mac OS, because that is a Unix system, but I don't personally have a Mac, so I can't say for certain. Instead, you'll want to do, I think it's, I believe it's source, and then it's venv bin, and then I think it's just activate again, or it might be activate.sh. It's something like that. So instead of a scripts file, if you're on a Unix system like Linux or whatever, you'll have a bin file, and then you'll either have like an activate or an activate.sh, which is a shell file. That's a script. And on those systems, you have to use the source command, which basically means just run the file. Whereas in Windows, it does that by default. Yeah, that's I'm gonna put some asterisks there. Just gonna say should be that, but I don't have it in front of me, so you might have to play around or Google it. But I'm pretty certain that's what it is. Okay, so we're within our terminal. Let's install some packages. Let's install pandas again. We want to install pandas because that's just what I've got set up on the demo. So it's having a think. It's using some cache versions because it's already downloaded it once, which is great. Should hopefully make things a bit quicker, and it's installing them. And stuff's moving around. The squiggly lines have gone. And there we go. Cool. So you'll notice that during that, this moved around. Some stuff happened over here. And I think if we go into lib, so that's lib here is, I think it's like library, but site packages, this is where it's installing them to. So this is a little cheaty way you can see what you've got. We can see pandas is in here now. And numpy, date util. These are the things that we remember seeing that it required to run pandas. So it's installed them straight into this venv folder just for this project. So now if I just save that file and I'm going to run it, I'm going to use the run button up here just to show that's working. And here we are, module pandas, and it says from and the directory that pandas is installed in. And as you can see, it's venv lib site packages, and that's exactly where it is here, as I said. So that's cool. And then if I want to run it directly back in my terminal, I could just do Python. I can do what is this called? Learning pip. There it is. Oh, there's another little terminal thing for you. So remember how I said that you can use tab to autocomplete if there's no other options? You can still do it if there's other options, but then you can just keep hitting tab to cycle through them. So there's learning.pip, and if I run that, we get the exact same thing, because Python in this terminal right now will always use the one in the virtual environment. Okay, so let's say we're done. Let's say we have finished with our virtual environment and we want to get rid of it. All we have to do is type deactivate like that. And that's it. We're out. So deactivate. That's all. And now we are back in our default context. If I now try to run that file again, we get an error. We get file not found. Import pandas, module not found. Nothing, no module called pandas. That's because we're back on our global version of Python. And on here, we don't know what pandas is, because if I do pip list, we have no packages. But then if I activate the environment again, and I do pip list, boom, we've got them because they're right here. So that's what the context that we're using does. It means that if we're using the Python that exists within the virtual environment, it will only utilize what is in there. But if we are using the global version, it's the global version. It doesn't matter where we are. So it's always important whenever you're making a project that has several requirements that you create a virtual environment in a way such as this so that you can manage exactly what version is required to run it in general. And the last thing you want to do, and I'm going to activate the environment once more, is pip freeze requirements. And the reason we do that is because then if you share your code with anybody, if they see a requirements.txt file, they know what it is, hopefully. They'll know, hey, those are the packages required for this to run. And these are the exact version numbers needed. So if I want to use this, code, I need to install these packages. And how do I do that? Because I realized I didn't actually talk about this. Well, it's pip install. And just like uninstalling, instead of passing the name of the library, we do R for reading a file, and we pass the file name. So doing pip install R, and then the file path for requirements.txt, that will install everything within it. Now, I don't need to do this here because these are already installed because I just generated the file, but that's how we do it. So that would be pip install R, and then requirements.txt. And that is all. If you ever end up in a situation where you've made a mistake and your Python environment is not working, or you've got some dependencies you didn't want, or it's getting out of hand, all you have to do is just delete it. Delete permanently. A little box came up off to the side, but that's it. It's gone. If I do ls for listing, you can see it's not there anymore. I can start afresh, just like that. I can make a new one, and I can keep on coding or doing whatever it is I am doing. So that's how we manage our packages, and it can be a little bit confusing at first. The key thing is to just not be afraid of the terminal, to understand what you're seeing. It's all very basic. It's made to be as usable as possible, and to just go for it. So yeah, if you're ever having issues, make sure that you are either in or not in the environment that you want. If you're trying to run things up here and it's not working, but you've installed it, make sure that you're using the correct environment, that this is using the global one if that's what you want, or this is using the local one if that's what you want. And yeah, it will all make sense very quickly. So thank you and good luck.